Welcome in to this week's edition of the Zone Heads podcast. I'm Brandon Kravitz. He's Zach Blobner, and this is our Christmas episode. We record every Wednesday morning. We go live to Facebook, and next Wednesday is Christmas Day, so I'm thinking that Zach and I are probably going to be busy. And Zach, I wanted to start by just throwing this out there. First of all, ho, 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 Merry Christmas. I grew up in a Jewish family, and I say it like that because I'm just not a religious person. If you are, God bless you. If that, more power to you. You were probably leading a more blissful life than me. But I grew up in a Jewish household, so I did not celebrate Christmas growing up. And I feel like I appreciate Christmas more than the average person now, because I'm experiencing it over the last several years for the first time. Like, I feel like I'm the kid that experiences you wake up and there's presents under the tree, and I'm told now that we have a kid, you got to kind of cloak and dagger this Santa thing. So it's a whole experience. I don't know if that's how do people who grew up with Christmas appreciate Christmas as much when they're older?
I think so, yeah. I mean, it's definitely something where like I went through a stretch of not being too excited for it. It was more about the time off, some good bourbon, hanging out with the people I care about. But I've had this change the last few years where I started to appreciate it again, because you just realize how much special it is that time of year. And it's because of the things I just mentioned, but like putting the Christmas tree up is special. And I think too, it just adds such a vibe, right? Like that's for me, like my wife, my neighbors, people around me in my life, like having Christmas surrounding them, aside from the occasional Grinch who even loves it, they just don't want to admit it. You get just people in their best, their happiest moments, for the most part, and if nothing else, it signals if people aren't in a good place. And, obviously I've been through some things the last couple of months, and I can empathize with people that feel this way. It's also the end of a long year or a long month or a long stretch for people.
Which can be a positive also.
100%. It's like that. All right, let's move on type of moment for a lot of folks. And again, it's usually in a good space. I do know obviously Christmas Day can be harder for others, but yeah, man, I think there's some exasperation that you're able to kind of breathe again at the end.
I've always had the tradition of eating Chinese food and watching the NBA. That's been throughout my entire life. And now as an adult, first of all, the NFL has infiltrated this. So now, of course, what am I going to do? Not watch the NFL? So that's part of it.
How dare you?
I know. Well, the NBA still has its place, and Chinese food still has its place. But now it's like I've been able to blend the two, where it's, it's about spending time with family and playing outside and all that stuff. So
I thought you were going to say you were watching the Chinese league basketball when you said blending the two. I was like, he's going crazy with this.
I did want to throw on this hat real quick while we're talking about it.
Oh, there we go. Tell me that's one that lights up. Tell me it lights up.
You thought I was going to have a Christmas episode and not come festive with it?
Tell me that thing lights up, bro.
It does. Let me get the button.
I passed. So as you find that button, I passed the guy the other day. We were out somewhere. I want to say it was like a brewery or something. Very nice. We didn't have the like epilepsy warning on the beginning of this episode. So here's your disclaimer now. Turn this off if you have it because of bright blinky lights. I passed a guy earlier, like at a social. I don't remember exactly where I was, but he had one of those sweaters. And I was like, hey man, you forgot to turn your sweater on. Like thinking it would just be like a casual, like kind of like funny joke. It was one of those where after I said it and his reaction, disclaimers up, I said it and his reaction, I was like, oh yeah, he didn't like that. I was like, why would you wear that sweater though? If you don't want people bringing up like, hey, that sweater turns on and has blinky lights. Like, I was like, maybe his wife made him wear it. He was not happy with me acknowledging that his sweater turned on though.
Nah, you gotta lean in. You gotta lean into the goofiness of Christmas if you got blinking lights on. I mean, come on. That's what it's all about. All right, Zach, I'm done. I'm done with my Christmas. I'm in the Christmas feels right now.
Yeah,
it's the holiday season. I'm excited.
Let it ride. And, we'll start with the naughty and nice list. We'll start with the nice list. Let's start with something good. I don't want to throw you right into Dolphins talk. It's been depressing. I have friends that
That's
are
good.
Miami
I
fans.
still have the shirt on, by the way, but support the crew. I think it's important during trying times to wear your team's clothes and colors.
I
So
respect.
you know what kind of fan you are.
Yeah, and look, not everybody gets toys. Some people get coal, and unfortunately, in Miami, in a lot of ways, not just the pro team, is getting that this time of year. But let's start with a positive. We'll start with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They beat the brakes off of the Chargers in LA. A lot of people came away nationally from that game impressed, talking about how the Bucs are a contender. And then all of a sudden, which I've been saying on this podcast for weeks now, and other people have mentioned, now everybody's bringing up the fact that the Bucs beat the Lions and the Eagles, and it's like, yeah, that was true a week ago, a month ago. Like, I've been saying that, everybody knows that, but because of the way that they handled business in LA, and they had won their previous couple of games, but not in the fashion they did against the Chargers. It has a lot of people again nationally believing in this team, a team that's coached by Todd Bowles, who got them into the playoffs last year, who has built on his wins 2 seasons in a row, looking to do it for the 3rd straight season, and has a good shot to do so if they can get to double digit and 10 wins this year. Like, this is a team with Baker Mayfield. Mike Evans is balling again. He's probably going to get his 1K if things stay up. Bucky Irving's an awesome rookie running back. The defense is finding some things and starting to click, and they're not even healthy yet. Wait till they get everybody back. I feel like there's a lot of good things surrounding the Bucs, and I know that this is very true with a lot of fan bases, Brandon. But Bucs fans just struggle to be happy. And let me just leave you this before I ask you the question. I've even seen people this week looking at the schedule and seeing the Bucs should win it, saying, "Yeah, but we know the Bucs." And I'm like, "Do we?" Because nobody said they were going to beat the Chargers, and people have been poo-pooing them since the bye week, where they've done nothing but win football games, starting with crushing the Giants out of the break. So, should Bucs fans be happy with this season already?
Oh, Bucs fans should be thrilled. Your team is a lot of fun. I think that's the key. I look at the Bucs. I've said this often. That I think they're like they're the the NFL version of the Orlando Magic. This is a team that I think has a limited ceiling to them, but they play hard. They're fun to watch, and they're scrappy as hell, and they're good people. Like the individuals that make up this team are really easy to cheer for as a fan base, and you want to see those players succeed. Who doesn't want to see Baker Mayfield win games and play well? And Mike Evans, for everything that he has meant to the city of Tampa on the field and what he does off the field. So for people like that, Todd Bowles, Grandma Bowles is a likable guy. So you want to see that teams like that succeed, and they're playing well. So of course you should be happy right now. Now, do I think there is that ceiling to this team? Absolutely. I believe what we're seeing over the last month is great. You got to beat the teams that are on the schedule, but it is part of the story. The Giants, the Panthers, the Raiders. And then you have that impressive win against the Chargers, but you could also look at a Chargers team that lately has been slipping. Over the last couple of weeks, their run defense is not what it was early in the season. Their run offense took a big hit when J.K. Dobbins went down. So the 2 best parts of their team, other than Justin Herbert, have gotten considerably worse. And the Bucs took advantage, and it took them until late in the game in order to do that. So if you wanted to be skeptical about Tampa, there's every reason to be. And I think I just don't like them as much as the teams they're likely going to go up against in the playoffs. But when you talk about happiness, this is all you should want from your team other than winning a championship is, do I enjoy watching this team play? And am I proud to root for the players that are out there? And the answer has to be yes to those.
Yeah. And again, we'll talk about some of the other, a specific other team in Miami here in a minute, Brandon. But
they're on the opposite end of the spectrum. Like that's sort of what I'm talking about. So we'll get through that. But
but I think that perspective is important because, like I said, I think there's certain things I've learned through my life and career that certain fan base, like all fan bases, feel. Every fan base thinks the refs are out to get them, right? Like that's something every fan base believes. So there's certain things that every fan base, but you need to be able to take a step back and put things into perspective. This is a Bucs team that won a Lombardi recently, that had Tom Brady and still kept winning their division with a guy like Baker Mayfield stepping into a team that was screwed there for a year or two. And now they're in a place where, yes, they can get to double-digit wins. They can win the division again. This is with guys like Chris Godwin going down. They've missed Mike Evans for a stretch. Antoine Winfield's out now. Like, they've missed a lot of these players for long stretches, and they're still trying to get healthy. But they could win the division again. They could get to 10 wins. And the type of teams they'll see in the postseason, and we're just talking about like getting to that doorstep, are like the Eagles and Detroit Lions, who they've already shown that they can beat. Now, they were healthier when they played those teams, and the Eagles were still trying to get healthy. They didn't have A.J. Brown. Like, they had a lot going on there. And look, Detroit's a monster. Like, just because you caught them up in Detroit doesn't mean that you would do it a second time. But they're banged up too, right? They lose Montgomery. They lose Aiden Hutchinson, who had 5 sacks in the first half, I believe, against the Bucs. Game.
I mean, the way things are going for Detroit right now, I think Tampa could beat them. And I think that's the thing. When I have a hard time arguing against for people that are optimistic about Tampa, and I really don't want to throw a cold bucket of water on that, because there's not a lot of evidence right now that Tampa can't compete with these teams. I just don't think they're going to win those games.
Fair.
But to say that
you wouldn't bet on it,
foolish.
You wouldn't bet on it, especially to go like back-to-back wins if you're in Philly and in Detroit or in Green Bay or whatever else. But I think in this time of year, it's all about belief. And if you don't believe that the Baker-led Buccaneers team believes in themselves in these games potentially in the future, I think that you're going to hurt yourself there, because I'd be surprised if they didn't catch at least a team in the first round at the minimum and find their way in the playoffs.
I think they fit the bill, and the Rams are a little bit like this too. We talked about that on the last episode. Mm-hmm. They're kind of the team that you don't want to play right now, but that doesn't mean you can't beat them. Let's not act like this is some juggernaut Bucs squad because they've won the last 4 games. But would I be shocked if they pulled an upset? No, I'm not going to predict it. And I would probably bet their opposition minus the number, because I think they'll be underdogs against whoever they play in round 1. Minnesota, Green Bay, Detroit. I would take any one of those teams, but Tampa's proven that they can win those games. Just as you can doesn't mean that you will. I mean, let's look last year. I'll just pluck a random game out. Christmas Day, the Raiders beat the Chiefs. That doesn't mean they meet in the playoffs and wheels up on the Raiders. Come on. We know how this stuff works. It's different in the postseason.
Now, that being said, we're assuming the Bucs will keep winning games and the division. The Falcons do have the tiebreaker. They're a game behind now at 7-7. But the Falcons are also making a quarterback change. They bench Kirk Cousins. He's making a lot of dough, Brandon Kravitz, to just ride the pine, but he has been awful. And I'm not doing justice to how bad he's been by just using the word awful. Like, he's been atrocious, whatever other synonyms you want to toss in there. They're benching him for the rookie Michael Penix Jr. And I think I don't think this is going to work, but I do want to say that I think this is a pivotal moment for the Falcons to prove that taking Penix was a brilliant move. Now, the flip side of that is, if it works out, paying Kirk Cousins was a dumbass move. But let's see how things go. I respect that they're willing to make the change, knowing they're close and seeing Kirk for what he is. I don't trust that coaching staff, though, to have a rookie step in and then all of a sudden ball out for a month. This is a newer coaching staff. Zach Robinson hasn't been an OC prior to this. He was helping on the staff with McVay, and that's all good and well. Raheem Morris is a defensive-minded guy. He's trying to get things situated. I don't know, man. I mean, I think it's the right move. I don't think it's necessarily going to change the outcome of their season, though.
I mean, it can't hurt. Kirk Cousins has been so bad. And I think that Michael Penix is the type of quarterback, because he spent multiple years in college. This is a guy that started his college career in 2018. So he's kind of like Bo Nix. It's a super rookie. This isn't a real true rookie that is like Bo Nix is older than Joe Burrow.
And Bo's been great this year as a rookie. We talked about that last week.
Definitely. And I think with some of those guys, you could say this about anybody for the most part, it comes down to fit. And does Michael Penix fit in that offense in Atlanta? We'll have to wait and see. We didn't really get much look at him in the preseason. It was weird. They went out of their way not to play him in the preseason. So NFL version of Michael Penix, I mean, if you act like you know how this is going to go, you're a liar, because we just have no idea what this guy looks like. But Based on what we saw at Washington, he's got a strong arm. He's a great leader, and he's a pretty good decision maker inside of the pocket. So with that being in his repertoire and the talent that he has around him, I mean, I like the receivers all the way down to Ray McLeod, Darnell Mooney, Drake London, the ghost of Kyle Pitts. You can leave him off to the side. That's just a name at this point. But I think it can work.
Playing the Bucs, and then you can bring them up.
Well, here's the thing: it's only how this is. Yeah, right. You know how this goes. It's only going to take one. It's only going to take one good game from Michael Penix out of the gate, and everyone's going to be right back on because this was the all hype team. Them and the Texans were the all hype team coming into the start of the season.
Yeah, the Texans, who haven't been great either, but they do get a win this past week, shutting down the Dolphins' season essentially.
What a transition.
Man, great. I just can't figure out what's going on in Miami. Like, riding the Dolphins roller coaster from the outside looking in has not been enjoyable for me. So I can only imagine those of y'all that are in the Dolphins bubble. I mean, literally, I don't think I've seen a team over the last decade go from Super Bowl to worst team in the league in terms of like the fan base's perception of them as often as I've seen the Dolphins go up and down from Tannehill to Tua now. And I have a good friend that brought this question up and was like freaking out with a bunch of people on Twitter and Dolphins Twitter. Like, are the Dolphins with Tua any better than the Dolphins with Tannehill were? Is this era of Dolphins football any different than that one? Which obviously is not something fans look back on and celebrate. I mean, it's more of like what could have been. And I think we're damn close to that being the same situation with Tua's team.
This year's version of the Miami Dolphins does feel a lot like those where you're kind of just getting by in your wins. Last year was a better example of what I think you had fun with as a Dolphins fan, where you had a high octane offense that was innovative and tough to keep up with for opposing defenses. And that was a lot of fun. You took pride in that as a Dolphins fan. Now it feels like they're just kind of skating by. And even in the games that they win, it's not like they're blowing the doors off of teams and putting up these crazy stats. There's a limit to how far that can take you. And we saw that last year because the second things get cold and, the things start to freeze up in terms of your offense. But those teams with Tannehill were really boring. And that's sort of what we're venturing into now with the Miami Dolphins. So have the Tua-led Phins been better than the Tannehill-led Phins? The answer to that is yes, because they've been more fun. But we are starting to veer into a world where it's looking like the Spider-Man meme, and they're just kind of pointing at each other at this point. Yeah, hopefully that changes. I think they need to overhaul, and I've kind of thought that for weeks. It's time to flush out this version of the Dolphins. It worked temporarily, and I think it's time for a completely new version of the Dolphins.
When you say that after the first comments, that's not Tua specific, right? Like you're saying, does that include Coach Mike McDaniel?
I'm willing to give him another year. Okay. I think we're kind of
who's being flushed out then?
I think you got to I think you have to flush out. I think you need to change the way that you're built personnel wise. This team being the all flash, no substance, kind of they're all hot sauce, no mashed potatoes kind of offense. I think they just need to get tough. Look at the teams that are winning right now. Look at the teams that have been good this season. Use Pittsburgh as an example. With their roster, they have stars on defense. They have no business being as good as they are. Why are they? Because they're tough and they punch you in the mouth. The Dolphins barely flick you in the nose when you play them.
And then try to run away.
They built from the outside and went in. They need to blow that up and build from the inside and go out. And turn to even if it feels a little bit Tannehill-ish, I think you kind of need to turn him into Ryan Tannehill. Let him be a game manager. He's not a superstar quarterback, but he is an above average starting level quarterback in the NFL, and he has earned his pay. Any quarterback that gets paid in today's NFL is going to be overpaid. It's like buying a sandwich at the airport. It might not be the best sandwich you ever had, it's going to cost $20. Sorry. And that's like paying quarterback in the NFL. So I have no issue with Tua's contract. As long as he can keep his head on straight, literally, I think he's worthy of that. But you got to get a tough run game, tough up front, and then just find serviceable wide receivers and get by that way. I think if they change the structure of their team and peel things back in that way, I think they find success, because this version of the Dolphins is just not working.
All right. So last thing on that, because again, when you're blowing something up, there's people that have to leave. And if it's not Tua, we understand they got to get better up front. And you're talking about the O-line, and like, that's fair. But if you're trying to stop building from the outside in, like, are you trading a guy like Tyreek Hill? You just paid Jalen Waddle. He has not been worth that deal, but he just got the deal. So I don't know how movable he is. Those are your two biggest pieces right now. I mean, Jonnu Smith has had a strong season, but like, what is he, like 30 as a tight end in this league? So like, it's really those two receivers. If you're talking about blowing it up and you're talking about adding value, you essentially have to move on from one of them, right?
I think you can move on from both if you had to, but if you have to hang on to Jalen Waddle, then so be it. I don't know how much you can get for Tyreek Hill at this point, because at his age and his price point, it's crazy how fast this changes. If we were talking about trading Tyreek Hill a year ago, imagine what kind of haul we would be talking about comparatively to right now, where if they got a second round pick, I think you're doing well for yourself. So I do think moving off of Tyreek Hill helps to change just the thought process in the way that your team identifies themselves, and then go into the draft and double down on that, and then go into free agency and triple down on that. And I think that that's the way that you can start to shift this. But moving off of Tyreek Hill is step number one. Moving off of guys like, and this I think applies to the defense. Odell Beckham Jr. is already gone. He didn't make an impact, but the type of mindset of this is going to be the type of player that takes us from here to here, that has flawed this team. So move off of the Jalen Ramseys. Don't trade for the Bradley Chubbs of the world. They're moving off of cheap assets in order to bring in these flashy names. It hasn't worked. So build from the inside, and it starts with a mentality, and they'll have the draft and free agency to actually put that into action. I hope that I see that, but knowing this organization, they'll do the opposite.
Yeah, definitely a lot of work to be done, but it's a complicated, nuanced chat, as always. But definitely in the National Football League, you talk about the Dolphins trying to bring in players to upgrade Miami. We're going to transition now and talk a little bit about the college team in town down there in South Beach, the Miami Hurricanes, who had a pretty damn good season. But specific to a guy like Cam Ward, they're not in the playoff. So for Canes fans, outside of wasting away a first-round type of quarterback season, and I'm not saying that to be funny. I saw the same thing in Gainesville with my Gators and Anthony Richardson a few years ago. But Cam Ward, now electric season. He's the reason Miami was even in the chat, in the hunt, and all the things in between. What does his life look like in the NFL? Is he worthy of a top 5 draft pick in 2025? Cam Ward is going to get a lot of hype. He's going to be one of the first quarterbacks off the board. But can you comfortably spend a top 5 pick on him, all things considered, in 2025?
Yeah, I think you can. There's reason to doubt.
Is that because of Cam, or because of the class, or a mix of both?
I think it's more of the class. I'm not the biggest Cam Ward fan when it comes to NFL prospecting. I think he's too much of a pocket dancer for me. And we're seeing that with Caleb Williams right now. It's the reason why he's not succeeding. He thinks that he can buy himself time by bouncing back and forth, and then eventually he'll find someone and he'll use that cannon to hit the open receiver. That works in the Pac-12, or what used to be the Pac-12. It doesn't work in the NFL. Definitely doesn't work in the NFC North. And Cam Ward is not the talent that Caleb Williams is. So he can get away with it even less, and yet he does it as much. When he is in rhythm and he's playing with confidence, and he's finding wide receivers in that sort of short intermediate, that quick passing game, he's a very comfortable thrower of the football, but I think he wants to make the perfect pass rather than just kind of stay in the rhythm of the offense. That's the kind of stuff that I see with him. That doesn't tend to translate well because it points to a lack of processing. And people that analyze the NFL draft at a professional level could explain that better than I can. But that's the kind of stuff that I see with Cam Ward. So I don't think in a typical draft he'd be a top 10 pick. I think he'd be more like someone that you settle for in the 20s. But yeah, I mean, you have Shedeur Sanders that I think is the clear best quarterback in this draft.
Agreed.
And then after him, for a while, people tried to tell us that it was Carson Beck. You can get all the way out of here with that.
It's not even the best on this team, maybe.
I tried to sell myself on Quinn Ewers. I was a Quinn Ewers guy. I was ready to get to draft season and try and really plant my flag into him as my guy in this draft class. But you talk about a lazy thrower of the football. He has all of Cam Ward's qualities, and he's not as good or as accurate as Ward is. So I think he should be drafted, but he looks like a guy that I would take no earlier than the 3rd round. So yeah, it becomes Cam. And then you have Jalen Milroe, I guess, will be the next one. But
yeah, I mean, that's a project. I think because of the class, he's a top 5 pick. I don't think he should be a top 5 pick, though. Again, you got to have that aspect in. To your point, if this was a stronger class, kind of like we saw last year with multiple quarterbacks, and he ended up in a situation like a Bo Nix did, where you're getting taken by a team a little bit later that, I just feel like he's going to end up on a team because he's going top 5 that is just going to waste him, because they're not going to be anywhere ready for a quarterback like him to step in and do some big things. I know the Giants are one of the squads that might end up with him potentially. You're hearing a lot of Shedeur to Las Vegas. I feel like, look, if you're Cam, you want to be drafted as high as you can. And certainly you will get an opportunity to go out there and prove yourself one way or the other. I think because the class is so weak that ultimately, though, it's going to hurt Cam Ward in his NFL career.
Yeah, I mean, look, right now, if you go to tankathon.com, which is they always have a good update.
Great website.
Draft order is. Vegas is number 1, and you can see that you can see that clear as day. I kind of hope that it goes that way, because you can see Shedeur Sanders as the Vegas Raiders quarterback, and there's something cool about that. It definitely fits.
Yeah.
Cam Ward going to the Giants feels like an abject failure already. Like, you could already
that's what I'm
see
saying.
It's not working. And
but
then
that's where he's projected to go. And that's why, maybe like I'm too hell-bent on that projection, but like no way that works, right? Like,
yeah, and there could always be a trade, of course, and things could still shuffle. But look at who else is right there. New England just drafted their quarterback. They sit at 3. Yeah. So if things were to hold right now, they're not taking Cam Ward. The Jags have Trevor Lawrence. Nope. The Panthers have Bryce Young, which if you had like a generational guy coming out, you could sell yourself on moving off of Bryce Young, but Young has turned it around. There's no reason to move off of Bryce Young
they're not
and take Cam Ward, who isn't the prospect that Bryce Young was coming out of college.
They're not going to do that.
And then you have the Titans, and that one I can kind of see.
Yeah.
So maybe he goes 6, which is, if you look at prospect rankings, overall prospect rankings, so this isn't based on where they're going to go. This is their level of prospects, because Ashton Genty is the number 2 overall prospect in this draft, according to a lot of but he's not going 2. No,
because he's a running back.
Yeah. So, but if you were to look at the overall prospect rankings, Cam Ward is around 6 or 7 from a lot of NFL draft analysts, and maybe that is just where he ends up. Tennessee, Cleveland, which, I mean, you could also see the writing on the wall for him there, but at least
I could drive a better chance. Tennessee, like that wouldn't be an awful landing spot. Look, they've got a lot of things to figure out themselves, but like I think he'd be better off in a place like Nashville. Expectations would be low. They've rolled through a lot of different QBs, obviously, the last few years. I think he'd be much better off in terms of situational in a place like Nashville with the Titans versus in New York with the Giants. I think his shelf life in Nashville to figure things out is at least a year, if not 2 or 3 longer than they would be in New York.
It sounds like you're with me. Are you not the biggest Cam Ward guy as far as an NFL prospect goes?
I'm not. I hate this class. I mean, I like the storyline of Shedeur to the Raiders, but like I don't think any of these guys I mean, usually there's one guy that's at least okay in every class, but this is the type of class that reminds me of, was that 3 years ago, 4 5, Kenny Pickett to the Steelers, Malik Willis goes a little bit later. We thought he was going to be drafted higher, but he ends up in Tennessee. Like, that class was so bad, so bad. And that happens. I mean, there's a reason why it's already so incredibly hard. You just mentioned Caleb Williams. Like, he's not the only guy that's ever been taken that was supposed to be awesome. I mean, even a guy like Trevor Lawrence, like, is struggling lately. Like, he's obviously been banged up a bit, and he's had a hit on him when he plays the Texans. But there's players that come out that feel maybe not generational, but definitely feel like a star, and they cannot even be an okay quarterback in the league at any point. We're talking about a class in here that feels like their ceiling is okay quarterback in the league. And that's such a hard thing. That's what I always try to remind people, because like it gets lost in conversation when we're watching NFL football. And a lot of us that are, talking, listening, and a part of this right now, it's so hard to make it in the NFL. And it's not just about the prospect. You brought situational up. I learned this early on in my career. You have no idea how these people are going to transition from being a college kid with everything at their disposal to an NFL player with the media even more around them. That's where I do think it'll be interesting, because Shedeur, because of his background with his dad, that can either be a benefit to him because he knows how to handle it and deal with it, or it could be something that he doesn't deal with well, because we know how brash Dion was. It's different to be that way as a cornerback in the league than a quarterback in the league.
Yeah.
So
it does seem like Shedeur has a handle of that, though.
At times, I didn't feel that way as much last year. I feel that way more this year, but the pointing at the watch, like there was stuff he was doing last year that like screamed Cam Newton in his MVP season, which was great on the field. But like, I think the way that he acted had a lot to do with his slide. And you talk about a guy that maybe could have played in the league longer. Like, those things matter. Teams remember when you're doing Superman in their face, and that, those guys don't want, those franchises don't want you. I mean, there's a way to be celebratory. I'm all about the flash, but I think Shedeur just kind of maybe rubs it in a little too hard at times.
Yeah. He's going to have to chill out when he's around a bunch of adults. But I thought the same thing about they're different type of personalities. But I think Caleb Williams, I was pretty hard on him personality wise coming into the NFL. I think he's cooled off a little bit. I think and this season has humbled him, it seems, and he needed that. And maybe Shedeur goes through something similar. I agree,
but then the flip side of that is that's a great step longevity wise, but you still have to bounce back from that as well. Yes. A lot of guys get crippled from that, and they just never become anything after the fact. Another guy that we're thinking can be an awesome NFL player and hope we don't see him crippled in the first round is a guy like Travis Hunter, who also played with Shedeur, obviously, at Colorado. I mean, he's a monster. He can do a lot of things great. Personally, I like Ashton Genty more. I know he's a running back. I know he's not going to go as high as Hunter. I know Hunter can do a lot. I do wonder, though, for Travis, if he's going to have to pick a position. I think for me, the clear-cut answer is yes. He's not going to be able to be a two-way player, at least at an elite level. If I were him, I'd be like, let me try to do the one I think I can be the best at. And if that doesn't work out, I can always pivot in a year or two to the other position. But the question, just bluntly, like, does Travis Hunter have to pick a position to be successful, Brandon?
I don't think so.
Wow.
I don't. I think that Shohei Ohtani has already laid a blueprint for this. Yes. What? We would have said the exact same thing.
That is so different, bro.
This is not me.
I hate that you're bringing up Ohtani right now. I hate it.
But we would have said the exact same thing about him, that you can't do that. You have to pick one, but you don't. Which
most two-way players do. Also, you're only pitching one every 5 days. Travis Hunter will be flipping every few minutes on a much more violent sport.
But this is where you said, does he have to pick a side in order to be successful? I don't think he can be utilized the same way in terms of snap percentage in the NFL as he was in college football. But that doesn't mean that he can't play both sides. He can be a specialist that's used on both sides of the ball and just take more plays off than the other guys that are around him. I think that's a way to look at this. I don't think he wants to pick a side. I think he wants to do both, but you're going to have to be smarter and more efficient with the minutes that you play in the NFL than you were in college, just based on the physicality of that level. I am not going to say that the Big 12 is the same thing as the NFL. This is a different level of competition, and he's going to have a harder strain on his body, and he's not going to get any younger. So at some point, that's going to catch up with you. But early on in his career, no, I think he can continue to be Travis Hunter. And if he finds a coach that can use him creatively, I think he can be a really special player on both sides of the ball. He's never going to be the best receiver in the league. He's never going to be the best corner in the league, but you can use him creatively. He has already shown you, and credit to Dion, he has already shown you that that is possible. You're just going to have to do it a little bit differently in the NFL. Sorry about the Ohtani reference, okay? He's a two-way guy.
Also, Ohtani is like in a stable of unicorns, and he's the unicorn in that stable of unicorns. Like,
but my point isn't that he's going to be the actual Ohtani of the NFL. It's that prior to Ohtani showing us, yeah, I can do it, we all said the same thing. No, you cannot, because it's never been done before. And that's one of the things I appreciate about what Ohtani did is he opened our eyes and our minds to the possibility that you can just do things differently. And if you're good enough to get it done and you're adamant enough, Ohtani is adamant that he wants to do both. And it's going to take Hunter to be that adamant that, yes, if you draft me, you're playing me on both sides of the ball. And then we can talk about what that looks like. But it's going to come down to whether or not he wants to do that.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how it plays out. I think that there's a scenario where you can maybe manage it. And again, that's assuming that he does transition, well enough that he can be an NFL player, that all the side situational parts of life, like, don't bog him down. I could see it where, like, he's strictly a cornerback, but he does, punt or kick returns, and then they use him on, big passing plays. I think it gets a lot more different when he's the receiver in, and then he comes in every once in a while on defense. I don't see that as likely personally, just because of the way this league goes. Like, he'll take more hits as a receiver, obviously, on offense. And I think it'll make it harder for him. But if he's just situational on offense and he's a cornerback, but I also, on the flip side, think he's more likely to be a successful receiver in bulk than he is a cornerback. So it'll be interesting. It's a good problem to have. Like, whoever drafts him is going to be happy about it, Brandon.
I would think so.
But
I hope he ends up in Jacksonville. I really want to see him with the Jags.
I mean, yeah, that's a team that, like, who knows what the hell they're going to do.
Well, they're going to have a different coach, so we don't know what kind of mindset they're going to have.
But that's the kind of dude you throw into the pot to be like, all right, Jags are sexy again, right? Like, There's nobody else I guess maybe Ashton Genty, but, like, it's different. Like, there's nobody else the Jaguars can take in the top 5, top 10 that are going to add that flash appeal. I don't know about on the field what it'll look like, but that's the only guy they can add that immediately puts them back into, like, we could see it again. Yeah.
Wherever he goes, Hunter's selling a ton of jerseys, no matter where he lands. That's awesome. And that's enough for me to hit you with another blinking light.
Uh-oh. Let's get back. Let's get festive, baby. Yeah. We're feeling it. Look at the holiday spirit. Merry Christmas to you,
throw
man.
The disclaimer back up there.
Happy Hanukkah. Happy holidays.
Thank you. Yeah, and let me be clear, too. As I mentioned the Jewish thing at the front end of the episode. I'm excited about Hanukkah as well. And Hanukkah day one lands on Christmas. So this is like a supercharged holiday this year.
Sounds
the
like
best
you're getting
of both worlds.
If you're getting more presents, but if you're giving more, it sounds dangerous.
It's a little bit of both and definitely dangerous. That's going to do it for us this week on the Zoneheads podcast. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and a Happy New Year to all of you. For Zach Blobner, I'm Brandon Kravitz. Happy holidays, Zoneheads.